My name is Joel McLeod.
I'm Roland Tanner.
And welcome to yet another episode of the 905er. This week, we are taking aim at politicians and wannabe politicians in the 905. It's going to be a good one. Why don't you start us off, Roland? Who do you have in your sights for this week?
Well, we've been mentioning some former Hamilton mayors recently, and another one got involved in Hamilton affairs. Well, obviously already involved, but stuck his head above the parapet, and that's Larry Diani, former mayor of Hamilton, one of the kind of what you might call the three horsemen of the apocalypse: Larry Diani, Bob Bertina, and Fred Eisenberger, who've kind of shared the mayoralty between them over the last decade or so. This comes back again. It's related to LRT, and it's related to the announcement last week that an organization, which I believe is called, we're going to be speaking to them in a week or so. Is it iVote? Sorry, I'm just looking through my feed here.
I Elect Hamilton.
I Elect Hamilton, yeah. Announced that they're kind of organizing to... because there needs to be a change of change of guard at Hamilton City Hall. I don't think this is a particularly revolutionary thought, and it's very much within everybody's right to organise in that way to do their best to get the candidates they want to see elected. And now they're actually not favouring a slate; they're just saying there should be change at City Hall, and they're going to be campaigning for that. However, Larry Diani objected to this in some style, and I'll read out the tweet that he posted. He said, one of the key ones was, we should welcome all into a process that wants to better the city, but not if that process is being driven by sour grapes, an ideology of hate, and carelessness in valuing those in office who are trying hard to do the right thing. So this was not the first tweet, actually. This was the second or third. An ideology of hate. I mean, these are people like Joey Coleman, people like Laura Babcock, who we spoke to the other week, people like Ryan McGreal, activists certainly, opinionated certainly, driven by an ideology of hate. In a Hamilton context, that's pretty freaking offensive. I mean, we've seen hate in Hamilton, and it wasn't coming from those guys. These are people who want a better city, and you may disagree with them. You've got every right to disagree with them. To use that kind of language is ridiculous. And then what he'd said earlier that really got my goat, and I reread my Twitter feed last week, I apologize for the poor language, was, and I'm just making sure I get my quote right here, his sort of first foray into this subject was even more directly at something that I think shouldn't be attacked by anybody, certainly by no respectable politician, and that was people who have an education and who get themselves educated. So what he said was, university and other elites are making a play for city council and board of trustees. This will be an interesting year in local politics. I'm looking forward to following events closely, and I'm sure others may be organising as well to counter these efforts at a left-wing takeover. But for God's sake, can we get beyond this nonsense of treating people who go and work hard and get a university degree and maybe go on to work at a university and who research and discover new things and maybe invent vaccines, who knows, and calling them elites and saying that for some reason because they chose to get an education, they're suddenly less worthy of being listened to? Spare me. I mean, it's... this is this anti-intellectual garbage that is far too pervasive in places like Hamilton. It's far too pervasive in North America as a whole. I mean, it's this folksy, hey shucks guys stuff that started with Ronald Reagan and ended up with Donald Trump, as far as I'm concerned. You know, this kind of being ashamed of your intellect, being ashamed of actually having gone out and tried to improve yourself, or discovering things that might improve the world. It drives me absolutely mad. And Larry Diani should be ashamed of himself for saying garbage like that.
Well, I mean, it's something we were talking about before we came on the air with this, is that, yeah, I mean, you're right. It shouldn't be going to university or post-secondary to enlighten yourself or to get it to further expand your knowledge base shouldn't be something frowned upon or you have to hide away. That the sad thing is that this yeah, you're right, this anti-intellectualism, it's 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 too pervasive. It gets into all of our discourse, and it stymies any advancement or any new ideas coming forward, because you get a group of people who are trying to engage in a democratic way. They are trying to influence. I don't want to say influence like it's a bad thing, but they want to organize and put forward change in the democratic process. That's how democracies work. Is that enough people say, "Hey, we all agree with this person or these people's ideas. Let's give them a shot. Let's see how it works out. If it doesn't work out, okay, change the team. If it does work out, you keep them in place. That's democracy. That's the principle behind it. To come in and say, "Oh, it's this left wing takeover," and whatnot. The question is, has the status quo helped Hamilton at all? I mean, we were talking a few weeks ago, the LRT debate with Laura Babcock. What is the third, possibly the third municipal election that we're going to have in Hamilton where this could be a ballot question? I mean, like, for crying out loud, like, make up your mind. Like, either take it or don't, but don't sit there and be like, "Oh, well, I mean, we have to have a vote on it." Like, shit or get off the pot. But this idea, like, oh, it's a bad thing to have, the smart people at the table who've done the research, who are educated on, to say, "Hey, this is what we think should happen." To say that it's a bad thing to have them at the table or have them in positions of power, it's foolhardy. I'm a little disappointed uh, that a former mayor of Hamilton would decry university elites that way, especially when you have a fantastic university with McMaster. That everybody in Hamilton is so proud of McMaster, McMaster Marauders, and all the great accomplishments that come out of that institution. To decry them as, oh, those university leftist elites, come on.
And it's a play of the right wing that someone who claims to be a progressive should be above stooping to this elites thing. I mean, you can call anybody an elite, pretty much, if you want to go.
Right.
Now, I have. I got a PhD when I was younger. I spent an awful long time at university. 10, 15 years, I forget. It was so long. Am I an elite? Well, maybe in one sense, but I grew up in a semi-detached house in Slough, which is a kind of laughing stock of a town in the west, to the west of London. I'll put my non-elite credentials up against just about anybody. The fact that I went out and worked, and I'm not bragging here. I'm absolutely not bragging, because I didn't do anything that anybody couldn't do if they wanted to. However, people who go out and work to achieve something should never be treated as elites, and therefore, okay, we can't listen to that guy because he's spent his life working hard. Get stuffed. Now, I'm not saying that people who don't go to university don't have an equal say. They absolutely do. But being unintelligent is not something to be proud of. It's just infuriating.
Part of the problem is that attitude is kind of how Hamilton has the problems that it does today. The fact that you can't have an honest debate about things like LRT, you can't have an honest debate about economic development in the city without it turning into, oh, you want change, oh, you're just one of those hoity-toity leftist elites wanting to ruin Hamilton. And the fact is, like, Hamilton has to change. It had the idea of it being this union-driven steel town. We're gonna just drive steel and sell steel all our days. Those days are gone. Like, steel is not coming back to Hamilton. It's just not. It's a dead industry. U.S. Steel has been trying for years now to try and shut down the Stelco plants and move out. They can't because of agreements, but they're not stopping trying. But the idea that, we're just get another factory in there to do stuff. No, you're not. It's not, at least if you are, it's not going to be where it's employing the thousands of union members that it used to. It'll be an automated facility where you're going to need, honestly, university elites running the show. But it's one of those things like this attitude. You're right. It sounds well to that folksy crowd, the aw shucks, folks crowd. It plays well to that. But when you get into the reality, the ones using that playbook are are being, I think, disingenuous and dishonest to the people, to say, oh yeah, you're just the salt of the earth folks. No, like you need to start we need to start rethinking of education as the lifeline of how we're going to solve a lot of social ills, and we're not. It's a way to hold power over people, because you think, oh, I'm just the salt of the earth, and you say, no, you're being hosed by those in power.
Yeah, anybody who decries education is, look at the American education system, which has basically collapsed in the last 20 or 30 years, and the problems that has bred. Our competitive advantage in the Western world over China or wherever the next sort of cheap labor economy turns out to be is education. That's what we have that they don't have in the same way. Now, God knows China is not far behind. I mean, but we can't compete on salaries and wages. We're going to have to compete on something else, and it's going to be education and research and innovation that's going to be it. He was saying a throwaway thing on Twitter, but it's so symbolic of this moronic attitude, and which is absolutely. Laura Babcock made a brilliant statement, I thought, when she was on, about Hamilton being like a city with a broken heart, with a series of bad boyfriends who keep on basically undermining Hamilton's kind of self-confidence and saying, no, you're useless, you're crap, you're worthless. Oh, we can't. People from the university, what the hell do they know? They can't do anything for Hamilton. And it's all about saying, this is as good as it's ever going to get. And, people like Joey Coburn and Ryan McGreal, Ryan McGreal's a fairly left-wing guy, I'm fairly sure. But, really, what they're talking about is a base level of competence where you don't put 20 million gallons of sludge or however much it was into Lake Ontario, or you don't put a slippery surface on the Red Hill Valley Expressway. And then, having done that, you don't cover it up for years on end. These are a succession of councils that have been incompetent on a grand scale, and Hamilton is paying. And we're meant to say, oh, well, they're trying hard. These are nice guys. They're just politicians trying to do their job. No, too bad. You're held to a higher standard. You suck. You need to get out.
Yep.
Anyway, next.
Who else wants some?
Oh, well, okay. Yeah. Well, you've got a story, and which is almost as good, I think.
Well, yeah. This May 24, Monday, May 24, if you were relaxing at home and you had a copy of the Toronto Star open next to you while you're drinking your morning coffee, you may have read an article titled, "Is This the New Face of GTA Conservatives?" It was by Alex Boutier of the Star, and basically, I'm not going to read it verbatim, but it was a puff piece toting the bona fides of Melissa Lantsman, who is going to be the Conservative Party candidate in Thornhill in the next federal election, whenever that may be. I read this because I was curious. So I like a good political piece, and I had to say, this is part and parcel one of the reasons why I think we formed this podcast, was that this was just a puff piece. There was nothing at all about what the issues facing the GTA or Thornhill were going to be. And the entire article was basically how great Melissa Lantsman is and how she's she's only 37. Good for her, I guess, to get the party nomination. But all it was just a puff piece to say, hey, as look at this young up and coming young woman who's gonna lead the next generation of Tories, and and I'm like, I don't care. What I want to know is what is the Conservatives' platform or policy going to be for the GTA? I mean, it was a very long article. It's a very lengthy article. It goes into her career, her history, a little bit about the political back and forth about the riding of Thornhill. Currently, it's held by Peter Kent. And the entire discussion about the issues facing the GTA and and Thornhill in particular was one paragraph that I'll read to you. Quote, Landsman believes Thornhill's issues are GTA issues, chiefly affordability, housing, transit, and transportation. End quote. Yeah, I mean that tells me nothing. We've been saying we've covered more about affordability, housing, public transit, and transportation and development in this podcast than the Toronto Star has done. And this is just kind of part and parcel with how really the mainstream media looks at the 905. We're not important until the writ is dropped, and then it's entirely about, hey, who's running in this riding and what scandal can we find in this riding. Never about what it means to make the 905 a better place to live in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the standard that we get. I mean, it was a very peculiar piece, I thought. It doesn't. I mean, the Star's reputation is usually in the opposite direction. Maybe they felt there was a bit of balance. I mean, that's fine. It's very unusual for nominated candidates to really get talked about very much. What has Melissa Lantsman done that any other potential candidate has done? Actually, substantially less. She's been a party insider for her whole career. She's worked for provincial and federal campaigns. Well, whoop-de-doo. I mean, she's another. Andrew Scheer was one of those guys. Never worked outside the party. Sort of got in from day one and went to the top. I mean, and if you're going to play this 905 card, then at least talk about actual issues that affect the 905 that are substantially different from elsewhere in Ontario. And I'm not necessarily blaming Melissa Lantsman for that. That's down to the journalist, but it was so superficial, and yet you've got this kind of 905 label stuck on top of it.
What struck me as funny was that it really is that it missed the opportunity to really kind of separate the Conservatives from the Liberal and NDP candidates by kind of start staking your claim on the 905, especially when the party leader is in the he lives in the 905. Aaron O'Toole is a 905er. His riding is Durham, and I'm like, why wouldn't you give Melissa Lantsman marching orders to say, you know what, start talking. We say how we're going to do this. We're going to fund this. We're going to change the policy on this, that, or whatever, and start staking your claim on it. Because as we've said before on this podcast, this is really the only region in the entire country where anything is up for grabs. Like, if you think about it, this region is volatile. There are certain seats that they can swing between Conservative, NDP, and Liberal, some more predictable than others, but this is a region that is in play more so than some other regions in the country. So to just say, oh, Melissa Lantsman, she's so great, and you're right, she hasn't done much beyond working in Stephen Harper's government. She helped run Caroline Mulroney's failed bid for the Ontario leadership. Then she ran Doug Ford's War Room and worked in his comms office at Queen's Park for a bit, and then decided, no, I'm taking a break and I'm going to go do what every other political staffer does when you're done at Queen's Park or on Parliament Hill. She went to go work for Hill and Knowlton and then Enterprise Canada, which is kind of like, again, not going into any other industry or any other business outside of really politics and policy. Like, you might know a lot, but it's you're right. It's kind of the Conservative playbook. I mean, if you look at like a lot of the Conservative superstars, this is what they do. They volunteer for a lot around a volunteer up the chain, and then it's kind of like, well, I've done my dues. I deserve to go run in a safe Conservative seat.
Yeah, to be fair, it's not just the Conservatives who do
No.
that. I can't stop myself from saying that to an extent that was Stephen Del Duca's path to where he is. That he was
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of the office guy for guy's name I can't remember now. Who former finance minister. Can't remember. Never mind. It will come to me. So, I mean, every party has this to an extent. And it's not necessarily always the wrong thing. Melissa Lantsman may turn out to be a fantastic MP if she's fortunate enough to win.
She
However,
will. It's Thornhill. She will. I mean, I'm not going to be like, oh, she has a real battle in here. It's Thornhill. It's been conservative for the last 4 elections. Don't make it sound like it's this. Oh, she's got such a uphill battle to fight. No, it's Thornhill's a pretty conservative part of the country or part of the region. It's a safe if you want to take Vegas odds, it's a safe bet she's going to win that seat. So again, I don't know why she gets this article where she's the new face of the GTA when I'm like she hasn't done anything outside of comms work for the party, and then she gets handed this nomination in a very conservative, safe seat. Like,
yeah, the reason you get an article in the Star is because you've got friends in the right places to get a journalist at the Star to write about you. You know, there are people running in the 905 for the Conservatives, I'm sure, with far more impressive resumes than this. It is a very normal looking resume. She's obviously got a skill for self promotion. I don't necessarily see that as a skill that's particularly desirable in a politician. But anyway, I
guess what I was going to say, what kind of grinded my gears on this one is it goes back to it's kind of a theme that we're starting to see because there's hints that we might be facing a federal election at some time in the near future, which is always something the media loves to play with. It may or may not happen, but yeah, the 905 is the only region that I think you're going to see a real kind of slugfest between the 3 parties to win seats and to take some gain and take away seats from other parties, and that's the way politics, that's the way elections are operated. But the rest of us who live here, we want to know how is a particular party going to make our life better? How how are you going to solve the issues of sustainability for the environment? Yet we also have a huge housing issue where housing prices constantly just go up and up and up. It's not a bubble. That's a side note. I hate seeing the word the housing bubble in the GTA. It's not a housing bubble. It is runaway housing prices. We don't have a control on it anymore. Let's call it what it is. How is the government going to fix it? I'm not going to propose any answers because I don't have any. That's what they're for. I want to hear what their solutions are going to be. Are we just going to build more highways? Are we going to push through highways in the region? Or are we actually going to come up with alternative public transportation plans so that we can get around? Are we going to provide tax incentives for companies to keep people at home rather than having to commute hours upon hours of their day to go to boring office jobs because, we just let companies build office parks in the middle of nowhere?
If you're a bright up and coming politician with the opportunity of having a 1,000 words or so in Canada's largest circulation newspaper, you might address some of those issues, or you might look at the ongoing. What are the effects of the aftershocks of COVID, so to speak, going to be on our society? And you can say, well, highways are a provincial issue. It's not fair. I mean, there's always that kind of get out clause with federal politics of nothing interesting is actually their responsibility. I shouldn't say that. But it's difficult. They always try to tie it to local issues. And it's like, but you're the federal government. You're dealing with foreign policy and you're dealing with, carving up checks to send to the provinces, but you would think, surely to goodness, you could come up with something more to say than, well, she's not afraid to criticize the party. Well, she was critical of the previous leader as he went out the door
Right.
that takes a lot of courage.
Well,
That's
she was critical of the party's LGBTQ rights because she herself identifies as a member of the LGBTQ community, and that's great. Um, except in this day and age, that's that's not a shocker. And I think maybe the story is more of if that's an issue for conservatives, that this is look, we have a member of the LGBTQ community running for us. That says something about conservatives. Uh,
yes.
in my opinion. And I'm sorry, but yeah, good for her. I mean, she should, if that's what, if she has to stand up and say, like, let's face it, gays and lesbians exist. They're within the party, and they have a variety of opinions on economic and foreign policy and environmental concerns and a whole slew of other things. Same as everybody else. Is that a story that the conservatives that we need to be addressing in the Conservative Party? Is that where they're at on policy development and building a team? Good for her for dragging the party into the 21st century. About time.
Comments that like that remind me of something I heard on a news program back in Britain, probably 30 years ago now, and it stuck in my memory because it was so hilarious. And it was comparing, this was in the early days of very, very early days of kind of environmental issues being uh, kind of political subjects that kind of could turn elections. What were major issues that people were talking about? And it was the three parties in Britain were the Liberals, Labour, and the Conservatives. And the journalist said, the Liberals say we should do this to reduce global warming, and we should do this, and Labour says this, and this, and this. And the Conservatives have brought out a new anti-littering campaign. It's the same. It's like, you seriously saying that because this would be the first lesbian uh, uh, MP for the Conservatives, that shows some massive change in the Conservative Party? It's like, no, that just shows how backward they are. For God's sake, that I mean, yeah, awesome. I mean, I'm pleased that finally they're coming into the 21st century. But
And
my God,
I was just reading. I was flummoxed. I was hoping to hear something from that. Like maybe I thought initially, oh, maybe Aaron O'Toole as the conservative leader is going to put some faith in her to say, you know what, I need you to kind of be my eyes and ears for the Conservative Party in the GTA. You're going to be, we need to win this region because this is where my seat is. It'll be where your seat is. Let's really go forward and really win over people to win them over for the next election. And instead, we get to get a puff piece that, I'm still left here going, I have no idea what the Conservatives are going to do. I don't know why I should vote for her because they don't talk about anything that they're going to do. And I don't care like what the reasoning is. I want to know what the party's going to do in this region. This region has a lot of issues. They're not Toronto centric issues. They are unique. They are different. They need their own priorities to address them. Each party has its own framework. I can imagine the Conservatives are going to do a lot more with tax cuts and trying to spark innovation that way. Great, wonderful. I'm interested to hear that. I really am. I would I would love to hear that. This was an excellent opportunity to kind of start hinting at stuff like that, and they completely dropped the ball. That being said, you know what? I know we extended out an invitation to Aaron O'Toole to come on this podcast to talk about his plans. I'm going to do it again because, or better yet, you know what? If Melissa Landsman is listening and she actually wants to come on and talk actually about what the Conservative Party is going to do for the 905 region, I am all ears to have her on. I'm speaking for you, Roland, but I'm assuming that you'd be okay to have her on.
No,
we've
just taken a bunch of pot shots. And it's absolutely, it goes without saying that everybody has a right of reply, always. Um, uh, yeah, and it's not even about saying that Melissa Lastman isn't or can't be an excellent candidate and an excellent MP. It's about that lack of substance. It's about the weird article, which just smells to me of hey buddy, I've got a friend, can you do an article about, we'll find an angle that makes some kind of sense, or I'll talk about the 905 for a paragraph, that will do it. These articles not every candidate gets articles like that. And as I say, a lot of them have better resumes than that to back it up.
But usually, again, if you're going to, every party has their star candidate that they really want to showcase, and that's fine. If the Conservatives want Melissa Lantsman to be one of their star candidates, that's great. Just give her something to say. Let her say. Like, I genuinely want to hear what her thoughts are on the region, what she thinks the Conservative Party needs to do to help the region. She had I don't know if she had the opportunity in this article. It was there, and the ball was dropped, in my opinion. And I'm frustrated as somebody who lives in the region, because I really want to know how they view development in this region.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Development is a huge one. And I mean, if you want to give my occasional habit of giving the Conservative Party advice, if you don't have policies, the opposition will give you policies, and they'll come out with all that stuff about you being right-wing nut jobs in hiding, and people will believe it because there's plenty of track record.
Well, nature abhors a vacuum, and if you're not going to put forward credible policy that people stop and look at and say, I need more information. I want to hear more. I want you to give me more details. And if you don't have those details, then it turns into, you're a bunch of bigots and social conservatives, and you're going to turn back Canada 100 years and all that. You need to put forward a compelling argument that's not just, hey, we hate the other guys.
And the one thing that I have noticed that Erin O'Toole has done that would seem to deserve some praise is his abandonment of the ridiculous any kind of carbon pricing approach, basically denial of climate change. He's abandoned that. And it's like, well, sure, it's not good enough to abandon it. You need to make it the flag of your party now. If you want people to believe you that you're not actually science-denying dinosaurs, you need to be out there waving the flag of, we need to get control of the climate, and things like that. I mean, that's the kind of things that will actually change people's mind about a party. Not, we've taken that off our policy documents, but we're going to try not to talk about it too much because it will scare the folk in Alberta.
Yep. All right. Well, I'm going to say let's leave it at that for this week. We're going to be back next week because, next episode is start of Pride Month, and we're going to be talking about pride flags because that's not a new issue here in the 905 at all. Thanks very much, everyone. We'll see you next Tuesday.
All right.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.